From heavy hitters like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees to underrated gems like Satan's Little Helper and the Furies, masks and horror so often go hand in hand. Of course, part of the charm of a good mask is that uncertainty, that intrigue, that morbid fascination of who or what lies underneath. But hey, sometimes, as the old saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. And that's true for near enough every poor soul who witnessed what was under the following masks, with these unmaskings more shocking than you likely could ever imagine. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are the 20 most shocking horror movie unmaskings. Number 20. Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Safe to say, Jason has had his fair share of unmaskings across the Friday the 13th franchise, but this legendary figure has likely never looked better, at least in his unmasked form, than in Part 7, The New Blood. Now, is The New Blood a particularly good movie? Yeah, for me, it ranks fairly near the bottom of the pile when ranking the franchise. But man, that unmasked Jason design is a cracker. Of course, Part 7 is effectively Jason versus Carrie White, with Jason going up against the telekinetic teenager Tina, and it's in a fight with Tina that Jason's mask splits in two, exposing a rotten, wide-eyed, haggardy-toothed, almost zombified gothic design for Jason's face, and it is truly glorious. Just a shame about the rest of the movie, mind. Number 19. The Phantom. The Phantom of the Opera. Viewed as the OG jump scare, 1925's The Phantom of the Opera sees the Phantom laid bare in all his glory, when his mask is ripped off from behind. Until this point, we've only seen a bizarre, uncanny human face, half fitted from brow to nose, and painted in an expression of empathy, with the lower hanging loose to hide his mouth. But all that is taken away to reveal a screeching, enraged Phantom, and man, is that face anything but empathetic. Maddened at Christine's disobedience, the looming mass of Lon Chaney moves ever closer to the screen, distorted and manipulated into a terrifying skeletal spectre. For an audience in the 1920s, this would have been a moment so unexpected, and it's no surprise that there were reports of people fainting during that time. And even now, this stands as a defining moment of early horror cinema. Number 18. The Predator. Predator. To be fair, the Predator looks freaky enough with its mask on. Badass, but yeah, still pretty freaky. Of course, the Yautja are a species of prideful sports hunters, targeting any others that they can get a fair fight out of, bringing their weaponry and tactical mastery to annihilate prey and turn them into fancy little trinkets. And in that first Predator movie, we get a first-hand look at what exactly is under that armor. Well, under that mask. That's when Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch squares up to his opponent as it sheds its mask for some one-on-one action. And yeah, Dutch's reaction said it all with one simple line. "You're one ugly mother flubber." There's the heavy jaw framed with mandibles, the deep-set eyes, the scaly skin, and, well, quite the mouth on him, hasn't he? Number 17. The Man. Hush. In almost every horror movie with a masked murderer, they wear that mask by choice, having something to hide, being able to go about their business without people knowing their appearance or their identity. In 2016's Hush, there's a whole lot of sinister menace behind this film's big unmasking. You see, Hush has a masked maniac toying with deaf and mute Maddie, slowly stalking her, all while Maddie is unaware of this. And when Maddie does become aware, she tries to earn her freedom by writing on a glass door in lipstick that she won't tell that she didn't see his face and that her boyfriend is on his way home. After all, if Maddie hasn't seen this killer's face, she has no idea who he is and wouldn't be able to report too many specifics to the authorities, meaning the killer, they could just call it a day there and then, a truce if you will, make his exit and leave Maddie in peace. But nah, in an eerie showing of intent, this killer brazenly removes his mask after reading that note, making sure Maddie gets a good long look at his face, proving just how serious the man is about doing some major harm to Maddie. So rather than being a shocking unmasking of some scary, hideous sight under the mask, this one is shocking for just how little this killer has to hide. Number 16. Ryan. Happy Death Day to you. First and foremost, the Happy Death Day movies thrive on being murder mysteries, with a time loop driving Tree to insane lengths to figure out who keeps killing her and causing her to relive the same day over and over and over and over, and you get the idea. In the first film, the babyface babyface killer eventually comes second to personal vendettas that are the true cause of death. But in the second movie, the two, they are one and the same. Taking on the school's mascot disguise to get away with murder, there's more than one unmasking that makes the cut in Happy Death Day to You. The first and most freaky that we're faced with, though, is an early shocker as roommate Ryan, the target of someone trying to kill him and trapped in his own time loop, manages to stop the babyface killer that's on his trail. After subduing the villain, Tree takes his mask off only to find that it's also Ryan, the very same fella standing next to her and staring down at his own body. Happy Death Day to You teaches us very quickly that despite living this day hundreds of times over already, nothing will be as we really remember it. Number 15, Sam, Trick or Treat. For a film that presents its main Halloween character as a little kid wandering around with a burlap sack on his head, it sure comes as a fantastic surprise when Sam takes the sack off and is not a child at all. Oh no, Sam is some shriveled, pumpkin-headed Halloween deity with a sweet tooth for trick-or-treat sweets and morbid violence, ensuring his rules of the holiday are stuck to, all as he casually watches on from the sidelines. Granted, Sam is a pretty cute villain, all things considered, but he's an entirely unexpected monster to pop out from underneath his Hessian hood when we were expecting something, well, just not the offspring of Pumpkinhead, really. Caught up in a fight with cranky old Mr. Krieg, Sam's mask is ripped off in the heat of battle, with the fight continuing until Sam is sedated accidentally with some sweets of his own. You see, the clue to staying on Sam's good side is in the film's title. If you play along with the classic trick-or-treat traditions, Sam, well, he's a pussycat, kind of. 14. ScrappyDoo. Scooby-Doo. Is Scooby-Doo a terrifying, brutal, bloody IP that brings genuine dread and nightmares with it? Nah, but I will take any chance to shoehorn Scuba Cornelius Doo and his pals into one of these videos. Plus, Scooby-Doo, whether that's the wider world of the character, or in this case the 2002 movie, is full of classic horror tropes and characters, all designed to introduce younger audiences into the world of ghosts, schools, and monsters. In that 2002 movie, of course, our main villain, Mondavarius, as played by Rowan Atkinson, is actually a robot who's being controlled by none other than Scrappy-Doo this entire time. Quite the unmasking, no? Particularly as an earlier flashback had revealed Scrappy had been booted from Mystery Inc. years prior after becoming a smidge power mad. Oh, and for marking his territory on Daphne. So, as revenge, Scrappy orchestrated his whole Spooky Island plan, and he would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Number 13, Shell, Kill List. While the Scrappy-Doo unmasking was a fun one designed to get a kick out of its audience, Kill List, that big moment is an absolute gut punch. If ever there was a film of two halves, this is it. What starts as a story of Hitman Jay returning to the world of contract killing ends with the story of a cult ritual. Seeded with tiny clues throughout the narrative, Jay's involvement with a force much bigger than himself never makes itself totally obvious. And instead, we're plunged into a mysterious sequence of white robes, straw masks, and a forced fight between Jay and a mysterious hunchback as the cultists watch on. Jay eventually wins out, having stabbed his opponent in the back repeatedly time and time again. However, when the hunchback's mask is removed, Jay sees the bloodied face of his wife Shell staring back at him. Even worse, her hunchback? That's the couple's son strapped to the back of her, now dead, before Shell herself soon dies from her injuries. What does it mean? Why did this happen? It's never hugely explained, but watching a man unknowingly murder his wife and child in the guise of a ritualistic battle, it is absolutely brutal. Number 12, Gunza, the Funhouse. Where better for a masked killer to hide in plain sight than surrounded by the lights and noise of a fun fair? Immersed in that special creepy atmosphere reserved for childhood memories gone sour, the Funhouse dives deep into meta territory by having a masked monster in a monster mask, with Gunther Twyman dressed as Frankenstein's creation for most of the film's runtime. After murdering a fortune teller, Gunther is harassed by his father and driven into a rage where he tears his mask off, proving that his choice of disguise, it isn't that far from the truth when his pale, mutated form is freed from its rubbery prison. Fanged, red-eyed, wispy-haired, and roaring in anguish, Gunther's monstrous self is a completely unexpected left turn on what one would expect to be hidden under his eerily accurate mask, dialing the movie up to 11 for the teen strapped at the fair, with the creature now intent on killing them all off. Nope, no thank you. Number 11, Andy Richards, Sorority Row. A loose do-over of 1982's The House on Sorority Row, Stuart Henler's Sorority Row is likely way better than it had any right to be. Is it a stone cold classic, a masterpiece, an all-timer? No, it is not. But it's a damn fine, easy-to-watch popcorn slasher movie, which is sometimes all you need. Features plenty of inventive, brutal death sequences to boot as well. When a prank kills a college girl after spectacularly backfiring, her panicked fraternity sisters decide the best thing to do is hide the body down a mineshaft. And when those sisters start to receive spooky text messages 8 months later, the hunt is on to find out who knows the group's dirty little secret. Of course, all as a masked murderer goes on a campus killing spree, because of course they are. In Sorority Row's flame-laced finale, the person behind all of this is revealed as Andy Richards, the boyfriend of sorority sister Cassidy. You see, Andy believed he had to kill all who knew the film's big secret, so that he and Cassidy, they could have a happy ever after future together. Pretty skewed logic like, but hey, that's what makes this fella a tad unstable. Making this unmasking particularly shocking though is that Andy, he's been positioned as one of the few nice, caring, considerate characters in a film, quite frankly, that's mostly full of unlikable jerks. Number 10. Alex Hammond, Prom Night. If Carrie and Halloween had a disco-infused, mildly dull baby, it would undoubtedly be named Prom Night. Dubbed a cult classic in some quarters, the reality is that this 1980 slasher is, it's a bit of a snorefest really. A snorefest with some bland kills and some extremely ropey performances. However, Prom Night does have a genuine emotional gut punch with its killer reveal. Going back to the beginning though, Prom Night starts with the accidental death of 10-year-old Robin Hammond, falling to her death in an abandoned convent after she's mocked by 4 older classmates. From there, we pick things up with these classmates 6 years later, including Robin's older sister Kim, as played by genre fave Jamie Lee Curtis, just as they are all getting ready to attend their prom. Throughout Prom Night, it's teased that the balaclava-clad killer is either an escaped sex offender who was falsely blamed for Robin's death, or that it's Robin's father, who just so happens to be the school principal and is played by Leslie Nielsen. When the big unmasking happens on Prom Night, it's Robin's twin brother Alex as the killer, which for a bang average slasher movie delivers a hugely poignant moment when we see an emotionally broken sibling driven to murderous vengeance for the loss of his sister. Number 9. Reverend Bates, Nightmare Beach. Possibly the least known movie featured in this video, Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare Beach is exactly the sort of run-of-the-mill slasher offering you'd expect to see from a film released in 1988. When the slasher boom, it was in the toilet. Still, it does have 1 or 2 excellent kills, plus the final act reveal of the big bad's identity comes a little out of left field. In terms of plot, Nightmare Beach opens up by showing gruff and tough biker gang leader Diablo being killed by an electric chair after being found guilty of murder. Despite proclaiming his innocence, Diablo, he takes his final electrifying breaths and swears bloody revenge on anyone and everyone. So, jumping ahead a year, during Miami's spring break season no less, a sinister biker starts to slaughter the generic teens who are in town to party. And how do we know they're partying? Because they tell us, yay, we're having a party, it's great. Believed to be the back from the dead Diablo, this murderer has all manner of inventive ways to kill seemingly random victims, before then turning his attention to Diablo's rival biker gangs and then his very own crew. By the time the motorcycle helmet is finally removed at Nightmare Beach's close, it is genuinely shocking to see that the person behind all of this death is Reverend Bates. The reason for such bloodshed? As ever, the Reverend was on a mission to murder those deemed sinners in his own skewed eyes. Number 8. Jill Roberts, Scream 4. Because what's a what culture horror video without a Scream movie, right? Right, I joke, we hear you. But interestingly, for a franchise that has so many shock reveals with its killers, there are few actual proper unmaskings in the Scream series. Billy and Stu, no mask removal. Mrs. Loomis, the same. Charlie, ditto. Detective Bailey, yep, he's another one that's no unmasking. Even the reveal of Roman Bridger in Scream 3, that is preceded by a lengthy monologue about Sidney having a half-brother. You could say that Quinn's unmasking in Scream 6 is a total shocker. After all, she'd supposedly died way earlier in the film. However, Scream 4's Jill Roberts gets the nod here today. In Jill, this was someone portrayed as Sidney Light. She was the main person in Ghostface's crosshairs in her film. She was the central victim, the big target, all while her friends and family died around her, mirroring so much of Sidney's story over the films. Of course, it's also easy to forget that Scream 4, it was intended to launch a new trilogy of Scream films. with many wrongly predicting that Jill, she would be the one to drive the franchise forward for Scream 5 and 6. But nope, instead Jill unmasked as the second Ghostface, revealing her motive as good old simple jealousy. With Jill desperate for the spotlight and fame Sid has had as a survivor of the previous 3 movies. So, to become a victim herself, or more specifically a sole survivor, Jill had to first create a new Ghostface rampage. Number 7. The Leader, the Purge. Referred to in the credits simply as Polite Leader, that would be the smug prick who had such a pivotal role to play in the chaos of James DeMonaco's very first Purge movie. While the execution has been a little wonky at times across the franchise's 5 films and 2-season TV series so far, it was important for the Purge to set its stall out early to establish what the Purge actually was. That early saw us introduced to the base notion of a crime-free America with minimal unemployment, where all crime is made legal on one night of the year, with Polite Leader and his mask crew hammering home what to expect from this burgeoning franchise. As Ethan Hawke's James Sandin and his family are shown as the audience's into Purge Night, we see James secure his home for the evening, looking to block out the outside world and quietly go about the family's own business. However, when a wounded stranger ends up taken in by the family, that brings Polite Leader to their door, and he is on the hunt for that stranger. Once Polite Leader removes his mask, it's then that the Sandins are made fully aware that they either hand over this stranger, or Polite Leader and his pals of bloodthirsty lots will break in and add the family to their hit list. Number 6. Man in the Mask, Dollface, and Pinup Girl, The Strangers. Brian Bettino's The Strangers is such a delicate, wince-inducing, slow-burn horror movie, revolving around 3 masked killers who like to cause chaos and carnage just on a random basis, and just because you were home. And in this 2008 movie, it's troubled lovebirds Kristen and James who find themselves home at a remote summer house when Man in the Mask, Dollface, and Pinup Girl, they come and knocking. By the time all is said and done, our central couple are tied up and at the mercy of their attackers, and that's when they realize their goose is properly cooked when these lunatics reveal their faces. Much like in The Purge, and somewhat similar to Hush, these unmaskings mean that, yep, Kristen and James, they know they're done for. The only difference being, The Purge's Polite Leader does at least offer the Sandins an ultimatum once he removes his mask. For Kristen and James, there is no such offer, as the 3 killers immediately stab the duo once those masks are off. For James, these stab wounds prove fatal, while Kristen, she would survive long enough to let out a blood-curdling scream as The Strangers ends. Number 5. Roy Burns, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. With Jason Voorhees hacked to pieces by young Tommy Jarvis at the end of Friday the 13th, the final chapter, A New Beginning, while released only 1 year later, picks things up story-wise 7 years down the line. And I know this film gets dumped on by a lot of franchise fans, but man, I've got a big soft spot for Part 5. And when a hockey mask-adorned killer starts off in teens at the Pinehurst halfway house near Camp Crystal Lake, is Jason somehow back from the dead? Or is the increasingly erratic Tommy Jarvis, is he the one behind these murders? Nah, it is neither of them, with a shocking twister in New Beginning being that it's miffed paramedic Roy Burns under the mask, operating as a Jason copycat after his son, that would be the uber obnoxious chocolate enthusiast Joey, he was killed in the movie's opening minutes, which in turn set Roy off on a mission of bloody revenge. Number 4. Mrs. Tridoli, Alice, Sweet Alice. Known as the mask murders in certain markets, 1976's giallo-infused slasher Alice, Sweet Alice has become somewhat of a cult classic these days. It's also a movie that has one of the most simplistic yet eerie masks in horror history. Where that mask is concerned, Alice, Sweet Alice makes the rather unique move to reveal its killer with a solid 35 minutes left. There's no final act unmasking per se, but that's not to say the final act isn't all kinds of twisted and disturbing. Set largely in and around a New Jersey Catholic church, this Alfred Soler offering opens with the murder of young Karen by a figure wearing a yellow raincoat and a painted, vaguely translucent mask. As for the prime suspect in this death, it's actually Karen's older sister, Alice, who's suggested to be behind this murder and the subsequent mysterious deaths that follow it. Regardless of several people believing that Alice is responsible for this bloodshed, the movie barely gets past the halfway point before it reveals Mrs. Tridoli as the person under the mask and raincoat, her diminutive frame leading audiences to easily think it could be a teenage girl under this disguise. The way that Alice Sweet Alice nicely sows the seeds of Alice being its killer, that's what makes the Tridoli reveal all the more memorable, with her then explaining her rampage is driven by the death of her own young daughter and her skewed viewpoint of sinners and unhinged intense religious devotion. Number 3. The Murderous Dwarf, Don't Look Now. Not a physical unmasking as such, but the big final reveal of Don't Look Now is the sort of slap around the chops that helps make horror so great. A bona fide classic of cinema period, Nicholas Roeg's 1973 picture is famed for its style, its score, and the shocking conclusion. Oh, and that really long, intense sex scene. But that conclusion, it revolves around Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie's John and Laura Baxter. Distraught by the death of their young daughter, poor Christine drowning in the film's opening that is, the Baxters move to Venice after John is hired to fix up an old church. There, John starts to see the figure of Christine, all as the winding streets of Venice play host to several brutal, bloody murders. Wearing the same sort of red coat that Christine was wearing at the time of her death, this mystery figure is finally hunted down by a desperate John who's frantically trying to reconnect with his possibly now alive daughter. Of course, as Don't Look Now ends, it's revealed that the hooded, red coat wearing person he thought was Christine is in fact a dwarf who's been behind these murders, with John himself fatally stabbed. Number 2. Everyone, Smiley. As horror continued to embrace technology and social media, 2012 brought along Smiley, pulling inspiration from chat services and online communities, with a smidge of Candyman and Bloody Mary thrown in for good measure. The core premise of Smiley, that's the titular killer that emerges behind someone if the person they're speaking to online types, "I did it for the lols," 3 times in a row. As for its design, Smiley looks like a deformed emoji with sewn shut eyes and a carved smile. And at the center of all of this is Ashley, a college kid whose friends, classmates, and even her would-be love interest are all killed in gory fashion, while she then finds herself in Smiley's crosshairs in the film's final act. Well, actually, it's Smileys, as in plural, multiple killers who attack Ashley, leading to her throwing herself from a balcony to her death. The biggest shock here isn't necessarily that there are numerous Smileys, but more so that it's Ashley's dead friends, classmate, and that would-be love interest. They're the people under the masks. Claiming to be a part of Anonymous, the group's aim is to launch the Smiley craze and create copycat killers at college campuses all across the country. That said, the final shots of the film suggest there's a real Smiley out there, and also that Ashley, she actually survived her fall, teasing the sequel, but yeah, we're now 13 years later, and that is still yet to surface. Number 1. Michael Myers, Halloween. There's a case to be made to include Halloween 5 here, where Michael Myers briefly unmasks and sheds one solitary tear in the direction of his niece Jamie, obviously before realizing, nah, I'm Michael Myers, and getting back into stabby mode. But how can you not include the opening moments of John Carpenter's iconic 1978 Halloween? It's maybe easy to overlook all these years later, but seriously, think back to the very first time you watched Halloween. We immediately start the film in first person as someone or something makes their way towards the Myers house, looks through a side window, and watches Judith Myers and her boyfriend. That unknown creeper then heads into the back of the house, grabs a large kitchen knife, picks up a Halloween mask, and makes their way upstairs after that boyfriend is left, and brutally stabs Judith to death, before making their way back out to the front of the Myers house, again all in first person. All we know by this point is that the killer is seemingly called Michael. It's only then that we get the shocking unmasking to see that Michael is an angelic-faced 6-year-old boy who's just killed his own sister, no less. In terms of impactful, a first watch of that first Halloween, yeah, those opening few minutes are extremely hard-hitting, and maybe overlooked and underappreciated all these decades later.